With less than a month to go, the Oscars are in a bit of a pickle, but I've got some tips on how to save this year's ceremony right now. This episode's brought to you by Factor. Go to factormeals.com/Murrell50off for a special offer, and stay tuned after the video for more info. Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell, here with a video on how I think this year's Academy Awards ceremony can get up off the mat. I've done a video before, about a year ago, about the Oscars in general, some overall tips I had for the Academy, but this is about this year's show specifically because the ceremony's already in a very weird spot. There are some nominees that people aren't very familiar with, and most of all, there are already a handful of scandals, most especially everything around Amelia Perez, that's overshadowing what the actual Oscar ceremony is about, which is handing out the awards and putting on a good show for people that are watching. So I decided to put together a list of things that I think that the Academy Awards could do this year to get people buzzing, to make it a show that people want to see, and to make it a show that people will think about next year at Academy Awards time. And no, I'm not doing things like go back and renominate other films or take nominations away. They've made their bed over at the Academy. This is all about optimizing the circumstances that we have for this year. And my first tip is to have a sense of humor. There's no two ways about it. The Oscars are in a tough spot right now, and I think that that spot is only going to get tougher if the Academy Awards don't seem to have some sort of a sense of humor about themselves. If you look back at the Golden Globe Awards, the most buzzed about, most popular for a lot of people awards show host was Ricky Gervais, because Ricky Gervais would walk out there to a room full of the biggest stars in Hollywood and tell them to their face that they're not the most important people in the world. And oh, by the way, he would also criticize the Golden Globes themselves.
And I'd like to quash this ridiculous rumour going around that the only reason The Tourist was nominated was so the Hollywood foreign press could hang out with Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie. They also accepted bribes.
Yes, a lot of these movies are serious, and you can treat the movies seriously while still having fun with the people who made them. So, I don't know, send Halle Berry out on stage to present an award with armed guards to keep Adrian Brody from making out with her again. Have Macaulay Culkin bring Kieran Culkin a Pepsi sitting in the audience. Have a little bit of fun. It'll loosen up the room, and it'll also be entertaining for the people that are watching at home. And when you're talking about having fun and humor and everything that goes with that, the most important thing to do this year is to address the elephant in the room. I can promise you there's not one person in the room that's not going to be thinking of everything that's gone on with the nominees, and specifically Amelia Perez, especially if Carla Sofia Gascon is in attendance. So you can ignore it, or you can have a little bit of fun with it. And I'm not talking about somebody lecturing Carla Sofia Gascon or chiding her from on stage, but you can acknowledge the fact that she and Amelia Perez are controversial during this award season. You can throw in a joke like, here's a pitch for you. Mexicans aren't really happy with Amelia Perez. They say it's the biggest insult to Mexican culture since Taco Bell. Or something like Carla Sofia Gascon got into a little bit of hot water over some mean tweets. I guess somebody forgot to tell her that Jimmy Kimmel hosted the show last year. Those aren't great jokes, but they don't pay me to write great jokes for the Oscars. If Carla Sofia Gascon gets angry or gets mad about the jokes, then let her be angry, let her be mad. It's not like she's Robert Downey Jr. last year who caught a few strays from the stage. She was kind of the author of her own controversy, and I think that the Oscars have had to put up with enough trouble over it to give themselves the luxury of a couple of jokes. And it doesn't have to be just about Amelia Perez. You could talk about The Brutalist. You could say, The Brutalist is under fire for some use of artificial intelligence in the production of the film. I, for one, think that that's pretty ridiculous. Let's look at a clip and tell me if you see any AI use here. And then the clip is like the worst AI Adrian Brody avatar that you've ever seen. Just the worst audio pieced together. Again, you're making fun of the situation. You're acknowledging it. It feels real and it feels authentic. And speaking of authentic, this is another big one for me. Let Conan be Conan. I am a huge fan of Conan O'Brien. I used to watch Late Night. I watched his Tonight Show every night when he was pushed out as host. I said, well, I'm not going to watch that show till I get another good host. And 15 years later, I'm still staying true to my word. And one of the things that I love about Conan is that he is very funny, he's very caustic, he's very quick-witted, and he's also very weird. He has his own specific energy, and when you let him be him, it can be something really special. If you don't believe me, just go watch his episode of Hot Ones. Conan's never hosted the Academy Awards. He's hosted the Emmys twice, the last time back in 2006, and I thought that he was great because he wasn't shoved into a sanded down, sanitized version of a safe awards host. He went out, he did monologues, he did jokes, but he also did some of his own stuff, and I want to see that brought to the Academy Awards. I want to see weird Conan on the Academy Awards. I remember on The Tonight Show, he did a bit with a horrific wax statue of Tom Cruise. That was one of the funniest things that I've ever seen, and that was like 15 years ago. I still laugh about it. Conan's 2006 hosting gig for the Emmys was a particular standout for me. He came out, he told some good jokes, he put Bob Newhart in an airtight cage and said that if the show goes over, then Bob Newhart's gonna die. And then he ended it all with a big musical number. But the musical number was about the fact that the network that the Emmys were on, the network that Conan himself was at that time employed by, was the fourth place network, that the ratings were tanking, that broadcast television in general was in decline, and it was hilarious because it was honest.
Well, we got trouble, my friends. Guess we got trouble right here at NBC with a capital T and that rhymes with G as in G. We're screwed.
You're on an industry show, but you're not treating the industry with kid gloves. And I think that the movie industry, in many ways, is where the broadcast TV industry was back in 2006 at the advent of YouTube and DVRs and cable and everything else. Let Conan have some fun with it. Don't sit there with a stick up your butt. That's what people are expecting. My next tip is to bring out the big guns because let's be honest, a lot of the movies nominated this year aren't that familiar to a general audience. That doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that there are a lot of smaller movies nominated at the Oscars. So I think to balance those scales, they really need to amp up the star power at the ceremony itself. The biggest way that you can do that is with presenters. You can pair them up in exciting ways, and you can also do things that hype up movies that are coming out this upcoming year. Have the new Fantastic Four come out and do an award. Have Keanu Reeves and Ana de Armas present together to unite the Wickiverse. Imagine if you could get David Corenswet, Henry Cavill, and Brandon Routh all out there together to kind of stealthily promote the new Superman movie coming out. People would go nuts for that. And I'm not just talking about stars that have movies coming out. Bring the A-listers. Get Leo out there. Tom Cruise, Harrison Ford, Margot Robbie, okay, maybe not Will Smith. And kind of like the Superman thing, get some reunions going on. Imagine if you could get Michael Keaton, George Clooney, Robert Pattinson, Ben Affleck, and it'd be great if his health permitted, Val Kilmer out there. People would love that too. Or if you could get Emma Watson, Daniel Radcliffe, and Rupert Grint to go out as a Harry Potter type of reunion. You're going to have to try to hit some home runs, and not all of them are going to strike. Not everybody's going to be available, but if they go for these big pairings, these big group of presenters that would get people buzzing, that would be good on social media, that would be good for the show, then you may not hit a home run, but you could very easily hit a triple. None of that takes away from the movies that are nominated. They still get their moment in the spotlight, but it adds some buzz to the show, and it gets people excited to maybe tune in next year if they didn't tune in this year because, hey, you know what? I missed this big thing that happened. I'm going to watch next year. And if you can't get people to go to the ceremony, I think they should also bring the celebrities in with pre-taped skits and sketches and stuff like that. I give a lot of grief to the MTV Movie Awards, but one of the things that I loved about watching it was that they always got big stars to do comedy bits in the pre-tape. I remember one year it was Ben Stiller and Tom Cruise, and Ben Stiller was Tom Cruise's stunt double. Yes, it may seem a little more modern for an Academy Awards ceremony that's kind of stuck in its ways, but again, what you're trying to do here is generate interest and put on a good show, and that may mean stretching outside of the confines of what they're used to doing. Conan is great on location. Conan is great at pre-taped skits and bits and videos. It was some of the best stuff that he did on his late night show. The Oscars are a celebration of the previous year's movies, but they're also a celebration of Hollywood. So why not use the Hollywood stars at your disposal to get people excited again? And speaking of having stars at your disposal, my next tip is to embrace the hits. So last year, the most talked about moment in the show was Ryan Gosling performing I'm Just Ken from Barbie, which was luckily nominated for Best Original Song, which kind of set up why he was able to perform it on the show. But this year, I think they have an interesting opportunity because they announced that the Best Original Song nominees will not be performed on the show, which given the songs that are nominated, I think it's a pretty good year to do that. But instead of cutting music out of the show entirely, embrace the musical moments that were big this year. Have performances from non-nominated songs, but featuring stars of nominated movies. The easy one is Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo. Imagine if they went up on the Oscar stage and performed Defying Gravity or another song from Wicked. But you know what? Let's go one step further. Let's bring out Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth too. Let's unite the Broadway cast and the movie cast in this number. Let's get Adele Dazeem back on the Oscar stage. People would go crazy over that. Or you could have Timothée Chalamet come out and do a Bob Dylan song. Maybe bring Monica Barbaro out, who's also nominated for the film. They could do a duet together. Again, tied to the previous year's movies, not a nominated song, but something that would be enjoyable on the show and get people talking. I mean, Chalamet did Bob Dylan on Saturday Night Live. I bet you he'd probably do it on the Oscars too. Or you know what? Screw it. Let's do a full-on production number a la Blame Canada of La Vaginoplastia from Emilia Perez. Maybe that's not the best idea, but I kind of still want to see that. They did something like this before a few years ago with We Don't Talk About Bruno, but the reason I didn't like that is because it was a bad version of the song. You had a great song and then they decided to try to remix it and bring in all these people that weren't on the original song. Don't do that. Keep it simple, bring the talent involved, people will get buzzing, and it will make for a better show. But all of the tips that I've had so far, I will admit, do not focus on the movies that were nominated. They focus on things around them or things in Hollywood itself. So this is a tip specifically regarding the nominated films, and it ties closely to something that I said about the Academy back when I did my If I Ran the Academy video a year ago, which is to feature the nominated movies. A lot of the movies that are nominated this year have never been out of limited release. So for a lot of viewers, this is the first chance that they will have to see parts of the film. So show clips of these movies whenever possible. If a performance is nominated, show a clip, not a 5-second snippet. Show a 20 to 30-second clip of that performance. If it's a craft category, extensively feature what it is about that movie that was the reason that it got nominated. Because yes, you want to hand out the awards, but you also want to get people excited about these movies. And you can't get people excited about a movie if it's just a name on a screen or an actor saying 1 or 2 sentences. I remember when I was a kid, I didn't see a whole lot of the movies that were nominated because most of them were geared toward adults. But when I was watching the Academy Awards, I got to see some of the work that was nominated. And even if it stuck in my head till I was old enough to see it, it made an impression. Everybody keeps talking about the fact that nobody really knows the Oscar nominees. And one of the reasons that Oscar ratings are dropping is because the films are unfamiliar to the audience watching. But at the same time, at every opportunity that the Oscars have to actually feature the films, they don't do that. So yes, do all of the other stuff that's going to make the star power glow on the ceremony, that's going to get people talking on social media. But at the same time, the Oscars need to renew their focus on making sure that the audience also sees the best of film that's nominated, or at least in some cases, the movies that are nominated anyway. So those are just a few thoughts and suggestions I have about the Academy Awards ceremony. What do you think? What do you think are some things that the Oscars could do to kind of pull them out of this rut that they're in and actually put on a great show? Let me know down in the comments below. And before we go, I want to thank the sponsor for this video. This episode's brought to you by Factor. It's February, so there's no excuse not to be getting in the groove for 2025. Eating better is near the top of so many people's to-do lists, including mine, which is why Factor is a great choice no matter what kind of dietary preference you have. Factor sends chef-made gourmet meals right to your door, fully prepared for you to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. Factor also offers 40 different options across 8 different dietary preferences each week to help you meet your goals, including meals that are calorie smart, protein plus, or keto. And Factor isn't just for dinner. They also offer smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks, and more add-ons to fill out your day with ready-to-eat food no matter what your schedule requires. And we're not talking about bland frozen dinners here. These are freshly prepared meals that you get to select. Last night I had some herb-crusted chicken for dinner that was, let's be honest, better than I could have made myself. And this morning, I had one of Factor's cold-pressed juices to start the day off right. With Factor, you can plan exactly what you're going to eat every day and incorporate that into your plan ahead of time, which makes it really easy to stick to your goals. I know it helps me. It's time to eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Murrell50off and use code Murrell50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code Murrell50off at factormeals.com/Murrell50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Thanks to Factor for sponsoring this video, and thank you for watching. Be sure to stay tuned right here. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a wrap-up of the Critics' Choice Awards and also the Guild Awards that are being given out this weekend. And then as we get closer to Oscar season, I'm going to be looking at all of the other ceremonies as well as the biggest new releases. I'm going to have a review for Captain America next week and all that stuff. So make sure you hit subscribe, hit the bell so that you know when I'm uploading a video. But most of all, thank you for tuning into this video. I'll be back very soon. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.